Hi, hello, welcome to our next installment of our APA formatting videos. This one we will be talking about in-text citations. Similar to that reference list video we talked about, in-text citations is one of the most important elements of APA formatting to ensure that you're giving credit to those original authors and creators for their thoughts and ideas and data and evidence, etc. So let's dive on into this because this one's important. All right, we're going to talk about how to format an in-text citation per APA guidelines, both for paraphrasing and for direct quotes, including a long quote, and I'll explain more about what that means. And we're going to talk a little bit about the narrative type of in-text citation versus a parenthetical in-text citation. So let's get down to it. In general, we're back at our paper here. This is our title page. We're still talking about my main reasons for becoming a nurse. The general spirit of in-text citations is that you don't want to necessarily disrupt the flow of the content by putting an entire citation in the body of your paper. Instead, you house the full citation in the reference list, and you just give a snippet in the body of the paper so that someone reading that, if they want to go back to the original source of that information, they know the journal article, book, etc. to go back to. So they can find that easily on the reference page based off of the information you include on your in-text citation. So in the in-text citation, you have to give them the information in order to find that. And that information in your in-text citation does need to match what's in your reference list, okay? Generally speaking, any in-text citation you have is going to follow the author date system, right? So whoever created the source or said the words that you were quoting, and when that source was published or updated. Those are the two elements that are going to be in pretty much every in-text citation that you create. But of course, there's special circumstances that we need to be considerate of. The first thing I'll say is that it's incredibly important that you are very careful with the spelling of the author's name or the organization, if they're the attributable source, in your in-text citation and the reference citation. If you misspell an author's name or misprint the date that something was published, someone looking to go back to that original source might not be able to find it. And so then that can kind of put you at risk for things like academic misconduct and plagiarism because you didn't credit the original source correctly or accurately. So again, be very careful that you spell everything correctly, you write the correct dates, you put in the elements that need to be there, otherwise bad things can happen. Okay, so let's just come on down here. These are the headings that we talked about in another video. I'm just going to kind of play around in this first section here just for demonstration purposes. Keep in mind, please, I'm not actually writing a paper, so things might not logically flow like you would. I'm not expecting this to get an A or anything. I'm just demonstrating what the citations might look like. Okay? All right, so starting with family, I'm going to go back to one of the original sources that I'm using for this paper, which is a journal article, and I'm going to pull something that I can paraphrase from that. So let's take a look at this. So this is the journal article from the Journal of Advanced Nursing, I believe it's called. Yes. By Ellie et al. Called Why Did I Become a Nurse? Personality Traits and Reasons for Entering Nursing. Right, so clearly what you would need to do in order to use the source is first read it, and then if there's information that you want to pull in there to put into your work, that's where you start with the paraphrasing and quote decision. So I found something that I think that I want to include in my paper in my, I think it's up here. It is here. Here we are. Okay, So I found something that I think I want to include in my paper, specifically in my section where I talk about family, that I have family members that either received nursing care or are nurses, and that is influencing my decision to become a nurse. And this statement here is telling me that the study conducted for this paper, this article, supports the previously held belief that family history is one of the reasons why people become a nurse, right? Generally speaking, paraphrasing is preferred over direct quotes when using other people's ideas in your papers or in your work. If it is a definition, if it's a statistic or data or something very particular that you want to absolutely capture word for word in that other author's voice and tone and context, then you would directly quote it from the original source in your work. But for something like this, I'm going to choose to paraphrase this, okay? So the findings of this study regarding reasons for entering nurses were congruent with previous work, which included et cetera, and family history. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say family history has been proven to be a driving reason for many people to become a nurse. Okay, I took that original author's words and I kind of left out some of the information and put in my own words and kind of made it my own. But the spirit of it and the fact that it's been proven goes back to that original source, which is this journal article, which means that I do have to support it with an in-text citation. So that's what I'm going to do here. So for that, we always start with for parenthetical citation, we're going to start with the parentheses, and then I need to go back to my author information. So I'm back at the top, and I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 different authors for this source. Now, in an in-text citation only, APA says that if there are 3 or more authors of a source, the in-text citation would only include the first author's name and then the phrase et al. So I'm going to take this Ellie, E-L-E-Y, and then et al, comma, and now I need to include the year that this was published, which was 2012. Okay. That's it. I have paraphrased the original source and credited the authors for their ideas or their evidence that they've produced in their study. Okay. Now, if there was something I wanted to quote specifically, right? If there was specific, well, now I got to come back down here. All right, so like say this for the sample size. When you start talking about numbers and populations and n numbers, things like that, it can get a little confusing if you start putting that into your own words. So in order to not risk changing the meaning of what the actual sample was, I'm going to put this into my paper as a direct quote. Okay, so what I do then is I simply copy it on my computer. I come down here and I paste it. I'm going to put this back in my font. Oops. There are ways to paste it without having to change it, but I didn't do that. So we have a little formatting stuff to fix here. Okay, I'll take out this last punctuation. So that's in direct quotes because I directly took it from the original source, and now it's time to cite it. If you notice, I took out that last punctuation mark because the citation is part of that sentence. And so that last punctuation mark should follow the citation. So here we are going to, again, write the author. And because we have 3 or more authors, we're going to write Ellie et al. We know the source is from 2012. And now what's different in a direct quote is that we need to put some kind of locator in the citation, right? So if someone wanted to actually pull this journal article and go down to that specific quote and look word for word what words you put into your paper, they would be able to do that. Now you'll notice though, this is an online journal, right? I don't see any page numbers. I don't know if you see them, but they're not there. So I have to find some other way to locate this. And we do that with these section headers or headings, right? So there's a couple ways you could do this. You could use this level heading where you state the study, but I'm going to use this one because it's much more specific to where I'm actually grabbing this information from. So what I do is I come down here and I'm going to write sample size section, okay, and then put the punctuation after the citation. So now if I wanted to go back to where this quote came from, I could look to the reference page for this source, use the link to the journal article on my computer and look it up and scroll right down to the sample size section, and then I can find this actual quote. Now, if this was an actual paper journal or a textbook or something that does have page numbers, here you would just write the page number. So page number 2 or 3, whatever page number that is, or a range of pages, right? But without an actual page number, there still needs to be something there. And so you would write the section that it comes from. Okay? So now these are examples of a direct quote and a paraphrase in a parenthetical citation. So now let's try the narrative citation. And I'm going to use the same statements that I use above, right? So a narrative citation essentially means that in the typing or in the content of the sentence, you're going to actually credit the source while you paraphrase or quote that original source. I know that might sound confusing, but in this instance, I'm going to say, according to a study by Ellie et al., family history has been proven to be a driving reason for people to become a nurse. Oops. Right, so this is narrative. I'm giving the author's name right here in the body of the citation, but we're still missing something, aren't we? We're still missing that publication year. So where are we going to put that, the publication year? Sorry, I need more caffeine. The publication year essentially is going to go in the body as well. It could go in parentheses, so we could say, according to a study by Ellie et al. In 2012, family history has been proven, blah, blah, blah. Or we could just write it as we did, and then at the end here, put it in parentheses. That's kind of your combo, parenthetical and narrative. And it's honestly dealer's choice, whatever your personal preference is as far as how you cite it. As long as all of the elements required by the APA guidelines are in there, crediting that original source, there's no criteria that you have to meet in terms of which one you use. Okay? And then an example of a direct quote, with a narrative in-text citation, again, you could do this part. According to, or let's say, Ellie et al. Conducted a study in 2012 where participants, sorry, I'm telling you my caffeine is low, conducted a study in 2012 where participants, and then steal this chunk of it. right? So we didn't use every word from the direct quote, but we're still quoting the bulk of it. So we have our quote, and then down here, because we have the year and the author already listed narratively in the statement, here we would just need that sample size section locator to complete our citation. Okay. Again, these in-text citations might seem tedious. Many people find it most useful to do them along the way rather than all at the end, and you have to dig up where you found them again. But whatever system you find that works for you, as long as you're including the correct information, then you'll be fine. There's no danger of any misdoings there. So the only other thing I was going to touch on is long quotes. You'll note that this quote here that I pulled for this first section is at 20 words long, right? APA says that if a direct quote is going to be longer than 40 words, then you must format that specially. Okay, so it's not going to look like this. This quote does in this paragraph. And for those specific formatting guidelines, I'm going to direct you back to the APA style website or your handbook for those guidelines, for those few instances where you do use those longer quotes. And that should be a relatively far and few between kind of a situation. So that's all I have for you on in-text citations. Hopefully this was at least somewhat helpful. I'm sure you still have questions on how and when and where to put these in. Please refer back to that website and your handbook when you need to. Your instructors are also available to answer questions. And thanks again for listening, and I hope you have a great day.